What up, peeps? Tony Baker here. It's time for another episode of Gross Pointe Bake, man. Gross Pointe Bake is the show about the numbers, man. Who's selling how many tickets? How much did this movie make? How many albums did this sell? You know what I'm saying? We putting the numbers up at Gross Pointe Bake. I'm a fan of numbers. That's why I do this show. Somebody asked in the comment section, yo, who asked for this? I did, and your illegitimate cousin asked for it as well. I'm obsessed with the numbers, man. I love the numbers, man. The grosses, the copies sold, I'm all in. In this episode, we got another versus battle, man. Another versus battle up in here. The box office giants, if you will. Box office muscle. Sylvester Stallone versus Arnold Schwarzenegger. Who you got? Who you got? Who you think put more butts in the seats, Stallone or Arnold? We about to find out, man. We about to break the numbers down. In usual fashion, I'm going to do their top 5 grossing pictures. I'm going to have those go head to head, and then we'll tally up the totals from that. All right? You know how we do it. So we'll go Stallone first. His top 5 highest grossing movies adjusted for inflation. These top 5s will be adjusted for inflation, so take that into consideration on who's coming out on top. All right? Number 5 for Sylvester Stallone, Rocky II. Rocky II grossed the equivalent of $317.9 million in today's money. Rocky II, the sequel, that's when he fought Apollo Creed again. They had the little rematch. Rocky II was another hit, and it grossed $317.9 million domestically, man. That ain't no slouch. That ain't no slouch right there. I feel like the Rocky series is a strong franchise. Honestly, I feel like the only weak one is Rocky V. And then if you count all 6 of the Rocky movies, and then you incorporate Creed 1 and 2, that's 6, 7, that's 8 films. And for the franchise to be 7 and 1, that's a good record, man. So Rocky II is his 5th highest grossing movie. Number 4, Rocky IV grossed the equivalent of $331.5 million at the box office. Rocky IV is when he fought the Big Russian. That's the one where Apollo Creed died. It was super heartbreaking. But to me, up until Creed, that was my favorite Rocky movie, Rocky IV. Just the stakes were high. It was ridiculous, and you know, the fight choreography in Rocky movies has never been realistic. The fight choreography in the Rocky franchise, Rocky 1 through 6, never been realistic. Nobody's blocking, no defense. Rocky Balboa has the worst boxing defense I've ever seen. He's just taking hits, no blocks. That's why he had the brain damage. If he dies, he dies. The classic line. The classic training montage. Rocky IV, $331.5 million at the box office. Number 3 for Sylvester Stallone, Rambo, First Blood Part 2. Rambo grossed the equivalent of $397 million domestically. This movie was huge. It spawned so many parodies and people still say, oh, you coming up in here like Rambo. Rambo became like an adjective for anything that was tough or violent or putting the work in. Man, he came in like Rambo. You know what I'm saying? That visual of the no shirt with the little tie around his head, it became iconic. Rambo was just a huge movie. First Blood was a movie that, in my opinion, that's the strongest in the franchise, First Blood, but it was also the most grounded and the most critically acclaimed. First Blood is when they were first harassing him. You felt sorry for him. It was a dope picture. They made the sequel. They ramped up the action, and it just became iconic. So Rambo, First Blood Part 2, number 3, $397 million at the box office. Number 2 for Stallone, Rocky III grossed the equivalent of $398.3 million at the box office. This is another good one in the Rocky feather cap. This is where he fought Clubber Lang, Mr. T. Mr. T is one of the best villains in the Rocky franchise, if not the best. I would put Clubber Lang over Drago, in my opinion. Mr. T was killing it in this Rocky movie. It really put Mr. T on the map for me. It was just one of those pictures that really resonated with people. Hulk Hogan was in this thing. This shit was going crazy, man. More of Rocky not blocking the hits. But you know what? We didn't care. We didn't care. We knew what it was. Rocky just don't do defense. Let's get it going, man. And Clubber Lang was talking that shit. Clubber Lang was talking shit. He was talking shit to Rocky's wife. He was like, man, you know what I'm saying? Anybody could get it with Clubber Lang, and he was the perfect villain. Shout out to Mr. T. But Rocky 3, his second highest grossing movie, $398.3 million at the box office. And number 1 for Sylvester Stallone. You probably already know the answer based on how this top 5 has been going. You already know the answer. Rocky 1, the first Rocky, 1976, grossed over $100 million in 1976 money. You adjust that to inflation today, $515.7 million at the domestic box office. Rocky was an absolute smash, critically and commercially. Critics loved it, the people loved it, it's still iconic. People still run up the Rocky steps to this day. They had a statue and everything, getting stronger. Rocky, number 1, $515.7 million at the box office. So what does that come to for his top 5? We tally all that up. Stallone's top 5 movies, adjusted for inflation, have grossed $1.96 billion. That's just his top 5. $1.96 billion, adjusted for inflation, just for the top 5. Sylvester Stallone's total filmography in the U.S., uninflated, is $2.9 billion in the U.S., $6.4 billion worldwide. That's how much Stallone is bringing to the cinematic table. $6.4 billion worldwide his movies have collected overall. That's some serious bread. Now let's get to Arnold, man. Let's see what Arnold is talking about. Schwarzenegger. Let's get into his top 5. Number 5, adjusted for inflation, Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, grossed the equivalent of $233.6 million at the U.S. box office. Now, a lot of people consider Terminator 3, it paled in comparison to the first 2, but hey, man, they all can't be winners, right? Terminator, we all know that's a trouble franchise. The Terminator franchise is not as dope as Rocky's. When you look at the totality of the Terminator franchise compared to the Rocky franchise, Rocky has a better track record in terms of quality. If you look at Terminator Salvation, Terminator Genesis, Terminator Dark Fate, they wasn't really hitting the same like Terminator 1 and 2. Terminator 1 and 2 firing on all cylinders. Terminator 3, people are divided on. And then the rest of the Terminators after that, yeah. But Terminator 3 made $233.6 million domestically, adjusted for inflation. The budget on this movie was huge, so I don't even know if they came out in the black. Number 4 for Arnold, Twins. Now we doing some comedy up in here. Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. This is Arnold's foray into comedy. It grossed the equivalent of $260.7 million at the U.S. box office. It was a smash hit for Arnold, and it was good to see him in a different light. You know, we was used to seeing Arnold in Red Heat and Commando and Predator and, you know, all these action movies. No more We in the Jungle. He wasn't sweaty with swords and guns and commandoing and Predatoring it up. It was like, yo, he's really out here having a good time with his twin brother that looks nothing like him. Twins was a smash hit, directed by Ivan Reitman, who also did Ghostbusters. It was cool to see Arnold in like a light, funny, fun movie, and he did comedy well. Also, Kindergarten Cop was another jewel in his crown. But Twins grossed the equivalent of $260.7 million at the box office. It was a good time, and people really pulled up for it. Number 3 for Arnold, Total Recall. Total Recall is number 3 for Arnold. It grossed the equivalent of $264.4 million at the domestic box office. Came out in the summer of 1990. Total Recall, from the director that brought us RoboCop and Basic Instinct. Total Recall was like a visual feast of just like dope action, dope sci-fi, dope practical special effects. Total Recall was a trip, man, especially when they threw them out into the Martian atmosphere and they was like dying and shit. That shit looked crazy. Total Recall was a hit film. It was expensive. Like, you know, that you can tell that movie was expensive, but it was a good time. Total Recall. They remade it with Colin Farrell. It was a pointless remake that didn't do nothing. But the original Total Recall is a dope film, dope action, gritty, rated R. It was dope. Number 2 for Arnold Schwarzenegger, True Lies. Grossed the equivalent of $327.9 million at the box office. True Lies came out in 1994, and it was James Cameron and Arnold Schwarzenegger coming together again to make some magic. True Lies is an action comedy, actually. It was a good time. True Lies was a hit when it came out in 94. As you can see, the grosses was good, the budget was high, the action was dope. Was that visual of him holding on to Jamie Lee Curtis while she comes out of the window of the limousine? That shit looked dope as hell. That was a dope visual. Jamie Lee Curtis stole the show in that goddamn movie, and it's a good time. I think True Lies is an underrated film. I think True Lies is underrated. Given the action set pieces, how funny Jamie Lee Curtis was, I just think it was a film that nobody really expected, and it was just some dope visuals, some dope set pieces, and James Cameron's track record is pretty damn solid, man. James Cameron knows how to put a film together, and he knows how to stage action well. So True Lies, $327.9 million at the box office. Number one, the number one Arnold movie, and I'm sure y'all already know what it is, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. Terminator 2, Judgment Day is Arnold Schwarzenegger's highest grossing film, $456.9 million at the U.S. box office. At the time of its release, it was one of the highest grossing movies of all time. Also at the time of its release, it was one of the most expensive movies ever made at that time. And it was James Cameron in his bag. Arnold did his thing. We flipped the narrative, and now he was the good guy. It's one of the best action movies I've ever seen to this day. It hails as one of the best action movies ever made, in my opinion. Linda Hamilton, Arnold Schwarzenegger, everybody was firing on all cylinders. I feel like the gross for this movie should be higher than it is because it's an absolute masterpiece, and it holds up. Terminator 2, $456.9 million at the domestic box office. Arnold's top five comes in at $1.54 billion. That's the inflated top five for Arnold. Now the uninflated, his total is $2.1 billion US, $5.4 billion worldwide. So in this battle, the winner is Sylvester Stallone. Stallone comes out on top. The Rocky movie saved his ass cheeks. Saved his ass. As you can see, Arnold had a more diverse top five. Arnold had Terminator 2, Total Recall, Twins, True Lies, and Terminator 3. So he had two Terminator franchise installments, but he also had a comedy in there, an action comedy, and a straight sci-fi epic joint. Sylvester Stallone, 4 of his 5 are Rocky, and then he got a Rambo mixed up in there. But Stallone comes out on top with the grosses, and Stallone is our winner in this battle of butts in the seats. Who y'all think was winning, man? And also, what's your favorite movie out of Stallone's top 5? And what's your favorite movie out of Schwarzenegger's top 5? Let me know. My favorite is Terminator 2. My other favorite is probably Rocky 4 in the other categories. So, but let me know. Let me know in the comment section below. Who do you think was winning? What are your favorites on these lineups? Appreciate y'all for pulling up. I'm always open to more suggestions for Gross Pointe Bake. Let me know in the comment section below what other kind of battles you want to see and what other kind of lists you want to see. I'm always listening. I'm always looking. And I'll cook those up, man. All right, y'all. We out.